Welcome back to the deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
And once again, listeners, we are in Occult Archives territory,
I do believe we are.
where we dig into history's most feared books.
The ones people are kind of scared to even talk about.
That's right, from grimoires packed with spells and rituals.
To ancient texts that hint at knowledge that maybe some thought was too dangerous.
Yeah, those books that make you wonder if you should even open them.
Exactly. And today we are going deep into one specific idea.
A mystical blueprint, some say, is hidden in the traditions of Freemasonry.
Ooh, this is exciting. We've got some sources that imply that the rituals and symbols of Freemasonry,
They might hold something far deeper than just like your average fraternal organization.
more like a set of blueprints for the nature of reality itself.
Wow. Yeah, and how we fit into that bigger picture.
Some even compare it to crown jewels of wisdom,
Hidden in plain sight.
waiting for someone to come along and rediscover them.
And that's what we're doing today.
Sifting through these perspectives
To see what we can uncover for you.
and trying to do it in a way that's accessible.
And maybe even a little fun.
Because why should uncovering hidden knowledge be boring?
Right. Exactly.
So fair warning, these sources we're looking at,
They're not your typical historical accounts?
no. They see Freemasonry as potentially the closest thing we have today.
To those ancient wells of knowledge.
Those mysteries that some say have been lost to time.
Right, and they even connect Freemasonry to some pretty mysterious groups.
Historical and occult brotherhoods and all sorts of fascinating stuff.
So let's jump right in with a pretty bold statement that caught my eye.
Okay, hit me with it.
One of our sources claims that Freemasonry is the nearest thing we have to ancient wisdom in the modern world.
That's a huge claim.
It is, isn't it?
Suggesting there's this unbroken chain of knowledge from way back when.
Exactly. Think about that, listeners. What we see today in those lodges and rituals,
Yeah,
it might just be a thread connected to something very, very old.
and possibly incredibly profound.
And it's not just abstract philosophical ideas. Right. One source actually says that the Masonic ritual itself
At every single step.
embodies a fundamental natural law.
Like it's built right into the actions and the words.
Even if many participants just see it as learning phrases and symbols,
The deeper principle is still there.
like a physical representation of a truth that goes beyond everyday understanding.
Right, it's like having a scientific formula.
You might understand it intellectually.
But that doesn't mean you've experienced its power,
Exactly. It's like having the blueprint for a time machine,
but not knowing how to turn it on.
or even realizing it could actually work.
The source even acknowledges that.
That for many Masons,
It might not be a life-altering experience,
they might grasp the words and the symbols.
but not achieve a full regeneration.
That's what one source calls it.
It's still a valuable experience.
Of course, the source even points out that.
No man has ever been made worse by the lessons of the lodge.
So there's definitely good to be found there.
Definitely. But then the source takes a bit of a turn. It claims that the universal science and the sublime philosophy,
Of those ancient mysteries.
like the ones in Egypt,
Chaldea.
Persia, they're now a dead letter in modern Freemasonry
So they're saying that the modern rituals are just a shadow,
of what they used to be,
with this whole deeper level just kind of lost.
and lost, or at least hidden.
That's a pretty harsh assessment.
It is, but there's another side to it.
Okay.
The source also says that any intelligent Mason,
Should recognize that the whole structure of Masonry.
it's built on those ancient traditions.
So even if the full understanding isn't there,
The structure itself is a kind of living monument to those ancient roots.
it's like looking at the ruins of an ancient temple.
You can still sense the grandeur, even if it's faded.
And you can tell it was built for a specific purpose.
Exactly.
Now the source dives into a possible reason for this perceived loss of knowledge.
At least in the United States.
It suggests that advancement within Masonry,
Often focuses on memorizing rituals and obligations,
so more about climbing the ladder,
than truly unlocking real knowledge.
which is defined in a very specific way.
It's about manifesting innate universal potencies,
So not just knowing the rules,
but actually embodying them.
that changes the whole game.
It does. It's a shift from outward performance.
To inner realization.
And that brings us to another fascinating concept.
Okay.
The journey of the soul and its potential divine origins.
All right, let's unpack that.
One source presents this really beautiful image,
Of the soul as an emanation of deity,
originally pure and wise,
embarking on this pilgrimage through the material world.
to ultimately return to paradise.
Wow, that's powerful.
Isn't it?
The imagery they use is so vivid.
Souls springing up like blossoms in the All-Father's garden,
Not a constant outpouring from a divine source.
creating individual sparks of consciousness.
And this divine nature, love, wisdom, life, light,
It has this inherent drive to repeat itself,
mirroring its perfection in those sparks of heavenly fire.
which becomes souls.
The source even emphasizes that those soul emanations,
They're all love and light.
and because they come from that divine fire,
They naturally possess those qualities.
but they don't stay static,
According to this view, they emanate further.
creating this cascade.
That leads to spiritual essences and eventually denser material forms.
Suns,
Planets.
the whole cosmos,
It's like ripples in a pond.
starting from a divine source.
And spreading outward to create everything we see,
So the spiritual is the foundation.
on which the material world is built.
And then there's this turning point,
Right.
this urgent appeal of the earths for man.
And the involuntary yearning of the soul for intellectual knowledge.
So it's not just a random fall into matter.
It's this kind of cosmic dance.
There's this pull from both sides,
The material realm seeking consciousness.
and the spiritual realm seeking experience and growth through knowledge,
The source even mentions the tempting serpent
representing desire,
and a longing for change and understanding
leading to the spirit being precipitated into matter,
for this earthly journey.
with the goal of regaining paradise.
By completing that journey,
That's a profound narrative about our purpose.
it really is. And it leads us to the idea of initiation.
If the soul has this grand journey, how do we navigate it?
How do we return to that state of purity and wisdom?
Our sources have some interesting answers.
They do the principle of initiation as they present it,
It's about knowledge unfolding gradually,
step by step.
as the individual's understanding deepens.
It's not just about being told information.
It's about this inner growth process.
That leads to true wisdom.
It's like learning a complex skill.
You master the basics before moving on
Exactly. It's the difference between being given the answer.
and figuring out the process yourself.
The source emphasizes that knowledge isn't just adding things up,
It's about a progressive transformation of your being,
a constant becoming.
striving towards supernal goodness.
It's not static.
It's dynamic and ongoing.
And that brings us to individual responsibility,
The idea that each soul has to work out its own salvation.
its own immortality,
The source directly challenges the notions of salvation by faith,
and vicarious atonement.
calling them perversions of original doctrines.
So it's all about personal effort.
Inner work.
You're responsible for your own spiritual development.
It's not about relying on something external.
The source even claims that early Christianity and this secret doctrine,
They saw a potential Christ in every man.
not just one singular savior.
And they're pretty clear about where they stand on traditional doctrines,
Right. They say that Masonry itself doesn't teach salvation by faith.
or vicarious atonement,
They encourage you to look at the history of Masonry.
to see for yourself.
This focus on individual transformation then connects to the next point,
Mastering your lower nature as a key to attaining a higher state of being.
even divinity.
That's right.
So this is where the idea comes in that the mind can be held hostage by desires.
Preventing us from seeking what's truly good.
It's that internal battle we all experience,
Exactly. The source describes a state of liberation
where you're freed from those desires.
and personal biases.
And you can see what's good or true in itself.
This state is symbolized by the square enclosed in the triangle.
The lower aspects of ourselves aligning with the divine
It's a powerful image of integration
and balance.
and the result of reaching that state
The source suggests that our knowledge and power expand,
through regeneration,
spiritualization,
leading to perfection in humanity.
and ultimately the attainment of divinity.
The meaning and aim of human evolution.
That's a lofty goal.
It is
And how do we get there?
through genuine initiation.
Or occult training,
It's not about denying our physical selves,
but about putting them under the control of the will,
purifying,
transmuting,
elevate,
controlling our appetites,
like alchemy.
taking base elements and refining them,
So it's about mastering our human nature.
not denying it,
We subordinate the lower nature to the soul.
preventing it from drowning out those higher vibrations.
It's like quieting the noise so you can hear a whisper.
And that brings us to one of the most intriguing concepts,
The lost word of the master.
the key to magic. Our source calls it the key to all the science of magic.
Which they define as the occult uses of soul forces.
So we're not talking about stage magic here.
No rabbits out of hats.
This is something much deeper.
The source contrasts the magician's knowledge with empirical knowledge.
saying it's connected to a philosophy as boundless as the cosmos. So it's about understanding the fundamental forces of the universe.
And knowing how to work with them.
Which makes you wonder,
Does the modern Masonic understanding of master and perfect
match up to this deeper cosmic meaning?
That's the big question.
The source suggests that modern Masonry uses rituals and glyphics.
Of a science that most Masons don't actually possess the key to.
So the lost word isn't just a story.
It has a literal and a symbolic meaning.
Like we're speaking a language,
Where we know the word.
but we've forgotten the poetry.
Exactly.
So the substitute word in modern ritual,
It's just a placeholder.
until future generations find the true word.
But the source offers a glimmer of hope.
Oh, okay.
It says every Mason can find that lost word
Through their own effort.
in inner transformation.
It's not just for a select few.
They use a great analogy.
Okay.
They say it's like having coal in a furnace
You have the raw material.
and the means to transform it,
A key is within you.
and the stakes are pretty high.
The source says finding the lost word is an individual work,
Each soul has to do it.
or miss out on immortality.
It's not tied to any specific religion.
It's about the soul's journey to its full potential.
Now, this idea of lost knowledge connects us to the ancient mysteries,
The source talks about a thread of tradition.
linking Freemasonry to practices and symbols found throughout history.
But there's a distinction,
One text says Freemasonry is an initiation
rather than a direct continuation.
of those mysteries.
The ancient mysteries covered a wider range of subjects,
Art, science, morals, philosophy, alongside the spiritual aspects.
so they might have shared roots.
But they've evolved differently
The source says that the universal science and sublime philosophy,
of the greater mysteries.
like the ones from Atlantis and Egypt,
They're mostly lost in modern Masonic lodges.
but there's still hope.
The source suggests that the knowledge is conserved,
In the archives of older fraternities,
accessible to those who are dedicated to studying and living a certain way of life.
like a hidden stream of wisdom,
And that mystery was originally veiled for protection.
and to be understood through symbolism.
A language that wise people could recognize across time and cultures.
Parables and allegories were used,
So even those who weren't scholars.
could grasp the core teachings
Which brings us to the historical lineage.
that the source proposes.
It connects a whole bunch of different groups throughout history.
Atlantis,
Ancient Egypt,
Persia,
early Christians,
specifically the Gnostics,
Manichaeans,
Albigenses,
the Knights Templar,
Hermetics,
Rosicrucians.
and even modern mystical groups.
They're all part of this esoteric family tree,
And according to the source, this lineage often faced persecution
showing the tension between these esoteric ideas.
and mainstream norms. The source also mentions primitive secret societies.
Connected to priesthoods in ancient civilizations.
Assyria,
Egypt,
Palestine.
suggesting that a form of Freemasonry has existed throughout history.
And interestingly, when Masons declared themselves Freemaurer around the 13th century,
They were often denounced by more orthodox priesthoods.
so maybe going public separated them from earlier secret traditions?
Possibly. And this brings us back to the importance of symbolism.
Right, one source says that Masonry, as it is today,
Does it teach anything fundamentally new?
in terms of morals, science, or religion,
So the real secrets aren't hidden doctrines,
they're concealed within the symbols.
which are densely veiled.
Even for Masons.
They require study and contemplation to understand,
The source suggests that symbolic Masonry might be a better term,
than mystic Masonry.
because the real mystery is in the symbols themselves.
And when they're understood,
They reveal a profound philosophy.
and a universal science that's never been surpassed.
That's a powerful statement about the wisdom in those symbols.
It is, and it leads us to the difference between Masonic initiation as it's commonly practiced.
And what the source calls true initiation,
The source contrasts the symbolic and ritualistic aspects.
with actual inner growth and development.
In true initiation, you don't just receive information.
You experience an internal awakening,
You discover the light from within.
and then you inform the teacher.
It's not about being told, it's about realizing it.
An internal transformation.
A journey of self-discovery.
The 3 Masonic degrees then relate to stages in this secret fraternity,
Finding the light, which is soul illumination,
unraveling the mystery of the serpent.
and achieving tree mastership.
But there's a key difference.
A master mason receives a substitute word,
But someone who reaches the 3rd degree in the secret fraternity,
finds the true word,
it's a deeper level of attainment.
beyond the conventional understanding.
Now let's talk about the power of obligation and vibration.
This is a fascinating idea.
The source says every word, every letter,
Carries a specific vibration.
with the potential for good or bad consequences.
So taking a Masonic obligation isn't just a promise,
It calls forces into being,
and those forces are kept in check.
as long as you act in harmony with the obligation.
But if you betray it, those forces can turn destructive.
Coming back to haunt you.
It's like a spiritual boomerang.
It's a powerful concept.
The source says man is not punished for his deeds,
But by his deeds,
which might explain why some who enter secret fraternities for selfish reasons.
end up destroying themselves.
And this brings us back to the lost word and magic.
The source emphasizes that a magician's art in this context
Isn't about tricks or illusions.
it's based on profound science and philosophy,
And the source challenges the traditional meaning of Masonic degrees.
saying that if master and perfect master and so on,
Don't align with his deeper understanding of cosmic forces.
then they're just empty titles.
The lost word tradition has both a literal and a symbolic meaning,
And the material needed to find it.
is within each of us.
Finding the lost word is essential for immortality.
And it goes beyond any specific religion.
So given that Masonry was so connected to the ancient mysteries,
What potential does that hold for us today?
the source suggests that if modern Masons truly sought the spirit of the symbolism
It could lead to amazing discoveries.
and a rediscovery of those ancient mysteries,
The wisdom is there waiting to be reawakened.
the knowledge hasn't vanished
It's been preserved in secret crypts,
for those who are worthy.
veiled by symbolism for protection and universal understanding.
The fundamentals of all Masonic institutions
And the ancient mysteries.
are what?
The source even gives an example,
The Order of the Architects of Africa.
also known as African master builders.
They were dedicated to unraveling the ancient mysteries,
But they focused on the inner secrets.
not the outer rituals.
And Frederick II created an inner circle within Freemasonry,
Inspired by these architects.
made up of those who held the key to the ancient mysteries.
So there was a recognition of this deeper level within Masonry.
And mystics played a role in preserving this wisdom.
Like Don Antoine Joseph Pernetti,
A hermetist and alchemist,
who was respected by Frederick II,
he founded the Académie des Illuminés d'Avignon
connected to Hermetic principles,
and the Swedish system of Masonry,
which taught a lineage of individuals who worshipped God in spirit and truth,
preserving the wisdom as a mystery.
even though idolatry was all around them
The specific ceremonies of ancient fraternities might have differed,
because of different leaders.
but the core substance and philosophy were the same.
The main difference between ancient and modern mysteries,
These are the religious aspects.
because religious observances have changed over time,
There's this historical tension between orthodox religions,
and mystics and idealists who seek a higher truth.
a pure ideal,
The East is symbolic in Masonry,
as the source of light,
which represents the order that holds the pure light of truth.
just like the rising sun dispels darkness.
Ancient priesthoods in the East were seen as teaching lessons about God, nature, and humanity.
Revealing our destiny and dependence on a higher power,
The idea was that truth and knowledge originated in the East.
and spread westward,
Freemasonry was called lux,
which means light,
signifying the doctrine of divine truth.
illuminating our journey through life,
Light was the ultimate goal in all the ancient mysteries,
symbolizing truth and knowledge.
and Masonry has kept that meaning,
Ancient initiations often involved a journey through darkness,
leading to an illuminated sanctuary,
where initiates received the pure and perfect light.
and gained knowledge of divine truth.
Egypt is considered the cradle of all the mysteries.
It had ancient learning and religious forms that influenced other nations
The Egyptian priesthood was a hereditary sacred caste.
with a lot of power.
They controlled initiations.
And they had both public and secret doctrines.
To gain this secret knowledge,
You had to undergo serious trials.
some say the origin of the mysteries can be traced to India,
Then through Egypt,
though that's debated,
and then Greece and Rome.
and eventually to Northern Europe and Britain,
The most important mysteries.
like those of Mithras Osiris and Isis Elusive, and the Scandinavian and Druidical rites,
They all share a unity of design,
suggesting a common origin,
possibly Atlantis.
and a pure doctrine that was separate from popular pagan beliefs.
Initiation ceremonies were often about death and resurrection.
With degrees and trials aimed at transforming the mortal into the immortal,
The rites were practiced in darkness
symbolizing the transmutation of the self.
to bring forth the soul's light,
Full knowledge was only attained after being thoroughly purified,
making religion an achievement.
not just faith.
The text distinguishes between public and secret worship.
secret worship the mysteries,
is said to have originated in Atlantis.
and been carried to Egypt.
All the mysteries were essentially the same.
In terms of substance and philosophy,
Only the characters differed.
initiation was the only way to access them,
And members could be recognized by the color of their spiritual fire.
which was visible to true initiates,
The secrecy wasn't about withholding knowledge
but about protecting it.
from those who wouldn't understand or use it properly.
The mysteries of Osiris represent the third degree of Egyptian initiation,
Osiris was a wise king.
and Typhon represents the dark side of the soul.
Osiris's murder and dismemberment are symbolic.
Isis, the mother principle, or the soul,
Searches for his body
and entrusts it to the priests.
to teach regeneration.
The missing membrum virile,
is also symbolic,
linked to the lack of this secret in the formal church.
and the focus on faith and atonement.
Osiris is also associated with the sun,
Isis with the moon.
and Typhon with winter.
The initiate symbolically went through Osiris's suffering and death,
The rite of illumination was important in many ancient rituals.
including Egyptian, Kabirian, Sidonian, Eleusinian, Scandinavian, and Druidical,
It symbolized the end of a journey through darkness,
and the dawning of light.
after overcoming prejudice, passions, and ignorance.
Light is fundamental in Freemasonry,
It's the first symbol presented to the initiate,
and it represents the essence of speculative masonry.
which is about contemplating intellectual truth.
The demand for light isn't just for physical light.
It's for intellectual and spiritual illumination.
To dispel ignorance and reveal truth
Finding the source of that light is the start of the path to mastership,
and immortality
the rite of entrusting in Masonry.
is when the candidate starts to receive the full mysteries,
It's like the autopsy in ancient mysteries.
where the initiate sees what's hidden from others,
It's the illumination of the soul,
becoming aware of the individual self.
like the Apostle Paul's experience,
The rite of entrusting is gradual.
starting with a communication of light.
The lambskin apron is the first gift in Masonry,
It signifies entry into the fraternity,
and originally it represented purification.
for entering secret fraternities,
The apron, or girdle, symbolized truth and passive duty.
like the Israelites girding their loins for Passover,
The three principal lodge officers,
are placed in the east, west, and south.
to symbolize the sun's journey,
Like in Brahminical initiations,
where priests represented Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
Masonic lodges are dedicated to St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist.
Maybe because they were Essenes,
The two parallel lines in a circle,
represent these figures.
and they also allude to the sun's position at the solstices,
The point within a circle is a universal symbol for the temple of deity.
often associated with the sun,
All ancient cultures recognized a supreme deity.
and the need for male and female powers for creation,
Phallic worship was a symbol of the male generative principle,
like Osiris's lost organ.
and the sun's decreased power in winter.
The lingam in India is a similar symbol.
And the Keats and the Yoni represent the female principle,
These symbols were originally about regeneration and immortality.
not impure things.
Indecent interpretations came later.
When civilizations were in decline,
The phallus was just an outward representation of the deity.
silence and secrecy were highly valued in ancient times.
The Egyptians worshipped Harpocrates, the god of secrecy.
And the Romans valued silence,
Ancient priests used probation and initiation.
to make sure only worthy people joined their ranks.
Like the Egyptian priests,
The Chaldean Magi,
the Celtic Druids,
and the Indian and Ethiopian Brahmins and Gymnosophists,
they all used secret initiations
the ancient secrets had two purposes:
to preserve religion.
and to guard wisdom.
The Magi and wise masters focused on knowledge of the human heart
So our sources connect Freemasonry to ancient wisdom.
and the power of symbolism,
They suggest that there's a hidden flame of understanding.
waiting to be rediscovered
It makes you wonder what other secrets are out there.
in other traditions and books.
Thanks for joining us
Until next time,
on The Deep Dive.
bye.